Welcome to part one of a two-part video where we're going to take a look at table variables. Now, T-SQL's table data type can be used to create a variable that can store a result set that is in itself a table. Now, when table variables first appeared, I think it was around about SQL Server 2005, everybody just went nuts. And we started using these things everywhere, and then we kind of came to some surprising conclusions about these things. Now, you will also hear the table data type called a table variable. And to create one of these table variables, we simply declare a variable. Notice the keyword declare. Then we begin with the @ sign to tell SQL it's a variable, and then we put our variable name. So declare @mtl would be our variable @mtl. And then we give it the data type of table. And now SQL knows that we need to also establish columns. And just like we're doing a create table statement, we just simply list our columns, right? Column 1, give it the data type. Then we can put null, not null, all that. Column 2, notice our comma separated here. Column 2, data type, comma, so forth, so forth. Now, what are the advantages of these things? Well, they're very fast, and everybody knew this going in. The minute we saw table variables, we just started writing these things, right? They're blindingly fast. You're writing directly into RAM. They're automatically cleaned up when you're done with them. How much better can it get? Then we started to realize a couple of disadvantages. Table variables, contrary to everything you've ever thought about writing things into RAM, can significantly impact performance on your SQL Server if you use it to store roughly more than 100 rows of data. Use that number on the exam. You can also use it in real life, but watch for that number on the exam. If you're going over 100 rows of data, you probably should be using something besides a table variable. Why? Well, the table variable is not supported in the Query Optimizer's cost-based reasoning, and this causes problems. It can cause the optimizer to misguess or to choose the wrong operation for creating the result set that's required, and it can really bog the SQL Server down. It can really slow the query down. So use table variables for 100 rows of data or less, and don't try to store any more than that in them. So now let's jump out to the Management Studio and start looking at some examples of table variables. Now, the first thing we need to do with table variables is to create one, right? Now, we're going to have to use table variables in a batch because we have to create the variable, load it, and then use it all in the same batch, because once the processing stops, our table variable disappears. So notice I'm going to declare @mtl, that will be my table variable, and then I just give it the data type of table. And now I'm going to give it the columns that I want it to have. And so we'll do the first column named first name, and we'll give it a data type of varchar 40. Then we'll do last name, varchar 40. And then we'll give it a column called orders, and we'll make that an integer data type. And then we'll do order total, integer. Now, you're going to see that I've already done some planning and some thinking by looking at the tables and the data that I want to use, but these things are really valuable, and I'll show you why when we get this completed. So here we have created our table variable. Notice our table variable's name is @mtl. It is a table data type, and then we declared the variable, if you will, with these arguments or with these columns in there, and it's going to store the result sets into there as if it's a real table. Now let's talk about loading it. I'm going to use an insert into. Notice insert into @mtl, so we're using @mtl, our table variable, as if it was any table out there that already exists. And I'm just going to list the columns that we're going to put in there, okay? First name, last name, orders. Notice it can see that this is in my @mtl table variable, and then order total or order totals. And so that's the columns we're going to insert into. Now, what are we going to insert? Well, I'm going to come in a couple of spaces so you can see this, and I'll write it in lowercase, so maybe it's a little bit easier for you to see. Now, I'm actually going to do a table join here between two tables, the sales order table and the person table. So I'm going to go ahead and start typing this. So I'm going to grab the first name from the person table and the last name from the person table. Then I'm just going to do a count function because I want to see how many things we're finding And then I want to do a sum on the total due column, and that's going to come out of the sales order header table. So I'm going to go ahead and put the alias that I'm going to use for that. Okay, so I hope I didn't lose you there. Don't let me confuse you, but you'll see it when we get it done. And these things will become very, very mechanical and automatic to you at some point once you type a few of these joins. Now, where are we getting this from? We're getting it from the person.person table, person schema, person table, and we're aliasing that as lowercase p, right? Notice our squigglies go away where the p was used. We're going to join the sales order header table right there. What I'm going to do is stop right here. This will be the end of part 1. Join me in part 2. We'll continue to code this up and you'll see a table variable in action.